So with these first three elements, you can already start to write pretty complex programs by storing values in a variable, doing some kind of operations on those variables, comparing them and making decisions based on logicals, using more complex multiple value and data structures, and then structuring your code with conditionals and loops. So these first three elements are kind of the backbone of how you structure any algorithm. But in addition to that, there's two other basic elements which make the writing of more complex code or algorithms easier. The first one is functions. So a function works just like in math, where basically a function will take in some certain amount of variables, it'll do some kind of operations within it, and then give back the values from that function. To start writing functions, you use the definition syntax. So it's def. So here you're saying I want to define a function, and let's call it my function. And you have double parentheses and a colon. And after you do that, you can start writing whatever the function is. So maybe my function for now, it'll just print out this is a function. Okay, so that's the basic definition of a function. And once I define this function, I can call it from my code, basically using by writing the name of the function and having the double parentheses. If we execute this now, it'll return that. But it's not printing this from here. Like if I comment this call out, you see it doesn't print anything, because this is just a way to store a certain sequence of operations, and it won't actually execute until you call it from the code. The power functions then they can actually be used to move data around, and any function will accept any number of variables for which it will work with, and then it can return a value from it. So in this case, we didn't specify any inputs or outputs, so all it's doing is it's always printing this is a function. If we want to start passing variables into the function, we do that within these parentheses. So basically, you need to define that within the function definition, and basically say that here I'm passing in a variable called a. For the execution, I will print the variable back, and then when I call the function, I pass that variable in through the parentheses again. So here if I declare a to be 10, I can pass a into it, and the function will get that number, and it'll print out that number with the variable string before it. Okay, so here I got an error because I was trying to concatenate a string with an integer. So in order to solve this, you basically just convert the integer to a string by wrapping it in the str parentheses. Okay, so now what happened here is I declared a to be 10, I called my function, I passed a into the function got a, and it printed out the string. And I can pass any number of variables into a function, so maybe I have b is 15, and then I just pass them in by separating them out with a comma here, and then I can add a space and then add a print of the b variable. And you can concatenate strings infinitely like this. You can put together any number of strings. Okay, so those are my variables. And the important part here is that these don't necessarily have to match this, only the number has to match. So maybe here I have b and d, and I'm passing b and d into this, but when it comes into the function, it'll take whatever names are in here. So this should work the same. What's powerful with this is that you can actually use this function and nobody has to know what you call the variables as long as they provide the right number of variables. So here I don't even have to use variables. I can basically pass in 10 and 15 by themselves, and that 10 and 15 will be passed into the function in those places, and they'll get assigned those names. Okay, so the next component of functions is actually returning values. So instead of just printing the names of the variables I pass in, I can actually do an operation and return whatever the results of the operation are. So here I can say C is equal to A plus B, and then I use the return syntax to pass something out of the function. Okay, so if I run this, the function actually executed and it returned this value, but because I didn't assign it to any variable or print it, it's not displaying anything else here. But if I now do print the result of my function, it'll print out whatever was passed through here. If I don't want to print it, I can also assign it to a new variable. So here I say E equals my function. I execute that, and now E has stored the result of that function. So if I ask it to print E, I have 25 here. Okay, so that's the basic syntax of functions, and these are pretty powerful ways to package specific lines of code and then be able to use them within your script.